Greetings and welcome to another edition of Alusine Multicultural Family Consulting. As always, I have a topic that I think is of importance, not just to me, but to individuals, to families, to organizations and cultures. But as always, in the beginning, I will say, if you want me to continue doing what I do, subscribe on YouTube. Type in Dr. Alusine Kanu and hit the subscribe button. Today's topic may enable you or to allow you to think about why it's important to promote communication. When we encourage communication, it allows us to understand what's going on an individual and a cultural basis. The topic for my presentation today is my teaching philosophy. I've been in the classroom for more than 24 years. At this time, I think, people may want to know what is philosophy of teaching. I think everybody is a teacher, and I think everybody is a learner from a foundational point of view. Our cultures are ways that teach us, how we exist in society. Our families help us with the need for inclusion, affection, and control. So education occurs on a formal basis. We go to the classroom. We are taught principles, concepts, traditions, theories, philosophies, skills, competencies, and so on and so forth. And sometimes education is informal, how we relate to our peers, to our relational, aspects in society. So education relates to my teaching philosophy. My teaching philosophy is unique because, first of all, my credentials prepare me to engage in a teaching philosophy in a formal or an informal basis. For example, I've earned a BA in speech communication from George Mason University. I've earned an MA in human resource management from George Mason University. I've earned a Doctor of Arts in Communication Instruction from George Mason University. I've earned my BA from George Mason and MA from George Mason University and Doctor of Arts in Communication Instruction from George Mason University. And I've earned a Doctor of Education in Pastoral Community Counseling from George Mason University. So all of these credentials prepare me to present my teaching philosophy. I think any teaching philosophy should include, before you teach someone, an assessment. To assess means to identify the needs, the skills, the competencies that are required, sometimes to perform a task, or to assess the cognitive. So to design any program should be the foundation by assessment. And based on the assessment, you design your curriculum, what I'm gonna teach, and the order I'm gonna teach. And from the curriculum, you design your instruction, whether you're gonna do a role play, whether you're gonna do a case study, whether you're gonna do a simulation, whether you're gonna do, a game. That's the form of instruction. And it's good in a teaching philosophy to manage what you assess, the design of the program, the curriculum, and the instruction. So those are my communication pedagogies. I provide instructional support when I teach. So what's in it for the learner in terms of my teaching philosophy? Well, I think first of all, the learner requires motivation. The what's in it for me? When you're teaching someone, you motivate them, give them a reason to understand what you're teaching and what you want them to learn. 2, to teach somebody, give them control. Let them have a say in what they learn. And give them the experience to weigh their strengths, to understand ways to improve. Also, allow the learner to understand diversity, the relevant factors, age, gender, ethnicity, culture, morality, ethics. All of those relevant background factors should be part of the experience of the learner. Of course, change, that we should experience change and respect one another in our cultures. So that's what's in it for the learner. The learner should be taught the social individual relationships, how we should have an ever-deepening relationship with each other. And we should understand identity management, how we relate, and our social environment. So to teach someone requires them to reflect on themselves, their family, their business, their community. Teaching is leadership in the sense that you create the experience that lead people to manage, change. There are many perspectives of teaching, but teaching is based on values, those values that lead to mutual growth, those values that lead to self-determination, those values that lead to cultures trusting themselves. My teaching philosophy is also spiritual, in the sense that I promote growth, I promote improvement, self-awareness, self-leadership. And what I do, I provide situations and possibilities for people to explore ways of understanding, management, and leadership, and communication. My teaching philosophy is based on the understanding of problem solving. Sometimes to teach someone is to help them to understand the aspects of problem solving. You define the problem, you analyze the problem, you look at alternative solutions, you present the best solution. So my synthesis of teaching is that teaching contributes to lifelong learning. I strongly believe if you create a comfortable environment that provides people to use language as they exchange meaning. Sometimes teaching is a way to negotiate meaning that motivates the learner to participate and to become involved in the learning experience. So how do we apply my philosophy of teaching? Well, one way is to use language and to understand the nature of language and culture. Another is to provide the knowledge and that leads to understanding past experience, to solve problems, and to look at new situations. Teaching is also related to counseling education. Help the person to have a committed living. Help them to be instruments of justice, loving mercy, and sharing in the fellowship of community. I believe when you assess, when you design, when you instruct with various instructional strategies, that's a way you can monitor whether people learn and whether they advance in their career fields. So my philosophy is I plan, I design activities with multiple formats: website, social media, short films. And as professor of communication, I create thinking, problem solving, and collaborative learning. One of the most immediate aspects of a teaching philosophy is the idea of whether you teach face-to-face or whether you teach online. Well, there are two sides to it. Some say those who are in favor of face-to-face, the proponents, they say, well, when you teach online, it lacks that student-teacher interaction. Well, they may be right to an extent, but those in favor of online education say that sometimes the best thing is online education, do your work at home. You learn the same way. But my philosophy is whether it's online or face-to-face depends on the training framework, whether you assess, you design, you develop the curriculum, the way you feature your instruction. But learning can take place equitably, whether online or face-to-face. My conclusion on my teaching philosophy is based on the idea that when you teach somebody, you create a process over their entire lifespan. You bring them into deepening relationships with each other, and the whole creation participates through education in spirit, justice, and love in mercy. I think the future of education is that it's global, but the challenges are the communication channels, whether the education is based on outcomes, whether the education is based on workshop and workforce development initiatives. The future of education is based on learning technologies and the curriculum design and the transactional approach when we use a teaching philosophy. So when we teach others, let them build social, cultural, political, and build their economic context. And that's the future of education. Education should build intercultural bridges and avoid those stereotypes, ethnocentric, and gaps that, affect the well-being of others. So my research is that I will contribute with my teaching philosophy to enable others to learn about public communication. I have an ongoing development that's scholarly, that has practical knowledge in teaching communication, human resources, and multicultural counseling. So my teaching philosophy, in a few words, is that everybody teaches. Number two, my teaching philosophy is that we should consider what's in it for the learner when we teach. My teaching philosophy is that we should balance individual and societal goals when we teach others. My teaching philosophy is that we can teach others to communicate, to convey meaning in an appropriate, in an effective, and in an equilibrium manner when they relate to others. My teaching philosophy, every teacher is a leader in a sense. Whenever you stand in front of others, you are teaching, and when you do, and that's a teaching philosophy. What I do is, I create the experience. Sometimes I don't inject what I know, rather my experience allows the person to reflect and to apply what they know and to use the learning in a way that works for them. Mine is not the only teaching philosophy. There are many others who have theirs. But I think education is important because it is through education that we transmit culture from one generation to the next. So once again, I thank you for taking the time to listen to my teaching philosophy. I teach online, I teach face-to-face, and I've been an educator in more than 7 educational institutions in the United States. And I will always be a teacher. I will always be a professor. Thank you once more. Again, subscribe on YouTube. Maybe I have more to say. May God bless you, and thank you for listening to me.